Okay, let's dive in. Wow, what a great start to this topic, right? The 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 holding thing for the video goes down and I can't get the angle and then it's like not open right and it's there's some handouts over there. Um and that's sort of and what a perfect start. What a perfect start to today where we're talking about Gavura and Nsyonos. And Yitzchak. So if you remember, we have two sides. There's 10 spherot. And of the spherot, you have the top three, which is either Keter, Chokmah, and Bina, or Chokmah, Bina, and Das, but that's your mind. And then you have the seven lower ones, which are your midot, your character traits. And each of the lower seven have a connection to a patriarch. And there's two sides. If you remember, one side is an expansiveness, an openness, a giving. And the other side is a constriction of receiving and acceptance. And then in the middle of the body or the middle of the spherot, you have a balance. And so what we're looking at is the second level of the next three. So the top three you have Bina, Das, and then either Keter, Bina, Chokmah, and Das or Keter. And then now we have, last week we did Chesed. Remember Avram, expansiveness, unboundless love, the giving, the coming out of the tent. And now, because each Mitos has an opposite, we swing to the opposite side. What's the opposite side of unboundless, giving, excessive love? It's a restriction, a holding, a tempering, right? An acceptance, a receiving. And where last week Chesed was Avram, right? Get out of the tent, come out, love. This week, Gavura is Yitzchak, Avram's son. And what's interesting about this is that one of the big reasons why it's Yitzchak is from the Akedah. And the Akedah always troubled me so much, right? So let's look at the Akedah. Yitzchak is already an adult. Avram has been doing this journey in terms of walking with Hashem and walking in the understanding of Torah before Matan Torah. Sarah and him had emigrated to the area of Israel. Sarah was in what is now the Shomron, and Avram gets a message to go with Yitzchak to the place where, if you're wondering where the place is, it is actually the place where the Temple Mount is. So we had a journey down from the Shomron, it was like a several day journey. And he takes his son, his adult son. It's not like it was a child. It's not like it was somebody who didn't have an understanding for 3 days. Oh, we're going to go make a sacrifice. Oh, we're going to go make a sacrifice. Now, Avram waited over 9 decades for Yitzchak. Sarah was told that she could never have children. In fact, when she became pregnant in her 90s, she laughed because it was impossible, right? So they had absolutely wanted more than anything to have this child. And now the story is that Hashem says, now you're going to sacrifice that child. And that the merit we see in Avram is that he didn't question Hashem, which I've had trouble with, right? And I'm sure a lot of people do. And even more than that, we say the Akedah every day in our davening. So why is it, of all of these major stories in the Torah, which there's many, why have the Rebbeim decided that one of the most important stories that we should say again and again every single morning is of Avram being willing to sacrifice his son? And of course, the hardest thing for me was, where was Yitzchak? There's no like talk. We talk all in the Torah about how this was for Avram. Sarah died from the pain. When she heard that Avram had taken her only son to be sacrificed, her heart stopped. So we hear about Avram, we hear about Sarah. But what of Yitzchak? He just walked calmly to right. And then when they get there, 3 days of walking, he's like, Father, where's the sacrifice? Like, where's the goat or the lamb? And Avram says Hashem will provide. And it's kind of like, okay, cool, Beseder. Like, right? When he knows that right now he's the one, he's the sacrifice. Then he gets on the altar. He gets on to get on the flames. Let's not say that Yitzchak does not understand this is not a high point of his life. Only is it? Is this the high point of his life? So he gets on the altar and Avram's ready to fill Hashem's command and kill his beloved son. Right? And a malach comes down, an angel, a spirit, a mazel comes down and says, stop. And then Yitzchak gets off and goes on his merry way. Now, right? Now, there's two things with this. One, I want to talk about how I viewed it for a long time from a viewpoint of Avram. Because it's Avram's challenge. It's Avram's Nsyonos. It's Avram and Sarah giving up their son. It's their challenge. Is how I viewed it. And I wrote a piece about that I'll send you the link to, about how much we've sacrificed, the women of Israel, right? And I connected this to what we've gone through the past 2 years in the war and what we've been giving up as mothers and what we've been willing to give up. And I talked about Rachel Pollan and Hirsch and the loss to the Pollan Goldberg family and how strong they were. And because I really looked at this from the view of Sarah and Avram. And the way I came to accept it as a mother, the way I looked at it from both Avram, Sarah, all the way through to the Pollan Goldberg family, was when I was 8 months pregnant with my first. Okay, so I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm like out to here. I'm sitting on the bed and I have all the books. I have the Dr. Spock and the what to expect when you're expecting and what to expect the first year and the like all of these different books that were going to tell me everything about how to successfully be a mother. Only, of course, I started thinking of everything that could go wrong. I'm like, wait a second. This was my first. Maybe I won't have a live birth. Maybe like my mother had a whatever, like maybe this was, or maybe it'd be a live birth, but the baby would be a vegetable and never could live. Or maybe the baby would be totally fine and then it'd be sudden infant death syndrome and the baby wouldn't be right. Or maybe the baby would get through that, but then get like meningitis and not make it to a year. Or I would get it through and they'd get kidnapped. There's a lot of kidnapping in the malls, right? Or they would get like hit by a bike. I I'm 8 months pregnant with my first. I'm very, very hormonal, and I'm by myself in bed with just a lot of books that are telling me everything that I can do wrong and be a total failure at this, right? And then I'm like, or maybe they'll get to be 18, 19, 22, 25, and I'll walk them down the chuppah and they'll leave. And what I realized was that my children, that I really wanted children. I really wanted children. I, like others, had infertility issues. I had, like, was told I would never have children. My first child's name is Nessia from Nace, a miracle. Like, but what I realized is that whether it was an hour, a day, a year, or a decade, or 2 decades, that this child, this neshama, was on loan to me. That I was a protector for some period of time. But that at the end, hopefully for the good, for my understanding of the good, the perceived good, that child would get all the way through successfully and get to chuppah and leave. But either way, whether it was an hour, a day, a year, a decade, or two, I was going to hand that child over to the rest of his or her destiny. And at the end, what I realized is that all I could give this child was a personal relationship with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, because I would never be there 24/7. I would never be there. It was all about me being a protector for a short period of time. And when I was able to see that, it changed my relationship as being a mother. And it changed my relationship with things and situations in general. Because there's a holding on. There's a holding on of not letting go that I don't want to let go of the thing that I don't want to lose, right? And this is Gavura. You see this? Chesed is this, right? And Gavura is the holding on. And there's a place for that. Why is it Yitzchak? Because Yitzchak really did live within the boundaries in a full acceptance. The reason we don't hear about Yitzchak's story, we hear about Sarah's pain and how Sarah died from the pain. We hear about the Nsyonos. This was one of the big Nsyonos of Avram Avinu, one of his great challenges. It was not a great challenge of Yitzchak. Why? Because remember, what we learn about the Sfirot is, remember the whole Myers-Briggs comparison, right? We do have a nature-nurture. We do have parts that work with our neshamas, right? Are we a more expansive person, or are we a constriction and holding in? And so for Yitzchak, it was him fully showing up as his best version of himself by not having an issue, by being fully okay that if this was the end of his time and he was going to be sacrificed for Hashem, then he was going to die at Kiddush Hashem. He was going to die in a holy way, and he was okay with that. Now, obviously, that seems really hard for us to understand, right? But like, if you think about it, really, it was pretty hard for me to understand Sarah, right? Like, had the pain and how did she? And so then it takes us to, what is this about Nsyonos? Nsyonos is suffering, it's challenges, it's your big blocks. Um, and I want to tie it into this question of deserving that I've talked to you about before, right? So, a Nsyonos, you'll have. I don't have a place to live right now. Not exactly. I'm staying at a friend's house in an extra apartment with my stuff like in like boxes, like it. So is that like, oh, let's look at that as like a Nsyonos, like as a great camp. Some people would actually be pretty freaked out not having a home. And the thing is that every one of the Nsyonos, every one of the challenges has a few things in common. Okay. The first is that it's the hardest thing for your neshama to go through. Okay. It's the hardest thing for us individually to go through. So, what does that mean? It's the hardest thing for me, not the hardest thing for you. And the hardest thing for you is not the hardest thing for me. In fact, I may not be able to get through your hardest thing, and probably I wouldn't. Why? Because the second thing that Nsyonos has in common is it's the hardest thing for me to get through, right? That I have to get through for my soul, my neshama, to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who loves me. And this week, we're talking about the purpose of Devekus, the purpose of cleaving. And so I'm going to come back to explaining about Devekus. So first, your Nsyonos is the hardest thing we get through. Second, it's the thing I have to get through. Third, it is the thing I already have everything I need in order to successfully get through it. I want you to really hold on to that, okay? Because it feels like the world is falling in for the thing that is on your plate right now as the biggest. And I'm saying yes, because it's the hardest thing for you to get through. But the idea of kapara, the idea of remember, you go down in order to go up. One of the basic ideas in Torah, in growth, is that you have to go down in order to go back up. So think about it like, do you know those little bouncy balls? We used to have them at camp. We would like sit, or with jacks, the jacks balls, you like just hit it one time, right? And it goes like way up. It goes higher than when you send it down because it has that. So that is what our lives are like. Okay. We have to go down. And when we go down and we get to that bottom place, I mean, this is a basic Torah concept. When we get to the bottom place, it gives us the motion to go much farther up. And so how do we know this? Remember, we look at everything. The question is, why am I here? What's my purpose? Why was I created? How do we learn? How do we learn to be godlike? We look at what he did, right? So how do we learn? You have to go down in order to go back up because that's what he did, right? There was everything, remember before the Simpson, everything was full of Hashem, right? Everything was full of goodness, full of perfection. And the first thing that had to happen was the very first constriction, right? Where he pulled back to make space for us. That pulling back is Gavura. That pulling back, Hashem showed us Gavura in our creation by loving us enough to pull back. Yitzchak was able to hold back in what would seem like an impossible situation for him so that everybody else could get through what they needed to get through. And because he had so much belief that he was exactly where he needed to be. And when we're in our right place, there is a peace. There is an absolute peace. I don't know where my longer term apartment or home is next week, but I'm absolutely certain that I've done my hishtadlut. I'm absolutely certain that in this matter, I have done everything that that I need to do, and therefore, this is exactly what Hashem wants to happen, and therefore, it's a gift. And I know that that's hard, but the reason I started working with you guys with my story was because I want you to know that when I say suffering or Nsyonos is a gift, that I don't say this lightly, right? I'm telling you, my time in the nursing home was the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me. I became not just a better version of myself. I became like a whole new, like a butterfly, right? In the cocoon, and it was so dark and so painful, right? You're in a cocoon. You're literally like covered. You don't see anything. It's just darkness. But when you know, when you have a muna, when you believe that you're going to come out of that darkness and be a butterfly, be able to fly, right? Then it's not hard. Then it's not hard. It's the not knowing. But for me, because I was led to such dark places, and I saw again and again and again how Hashem brought me out, not through any merit of mine, right? Therefore, when something happens that seems suboptimal, or I'm able to say, you know what, like this is exactly what Hashem wants. Like I'm okay with it because it's been a repetitive history in my life. And how do we all gain that? It's been a repetitive history in the Jewish life again and again and again. And Torah says this in every generation, there will be people who will rise up to destroy us. It says that in Torah. In every generation, people will rise up to destroy us. And in every generation, we will be saved and we will continue. Right? So if we start holding on to the fact that The challenge we're going through is absolutely the hardest thing. I'm not like, but it's the thing we need. It's the thing we need, right? So remember, before we're put here on earth, right? We're standing up there with the malachim, right? And we see our parents and we see like everything that's going to happen. And we choose. We choose our parents. We choose our life. We choose our Nsyonos. We choose our suffering. Why? Because we know when we have all the answers before we're born, we know the gift. So part of the trick of success in this life is being able to trust, or even better, see the gift when it seems irrational, right? And so as I was driving, I drove the last out of this apartment on Friday. And the person who was driving me, I was like, oh, it's like a sad day. And the person was like, no, it's not. What a happy day. Like, it's so clear that, like, you're on to a next best thing, right? And so when we can change our minds to see that, because remember, our goal is to live in joy, not to always be happy, not to always be besimcha, but to have joy. Why? Because when I'm able to really, really, really believe that everything that is happening isn't just as it's meant to be, but is for the best, which is what bitachon is. And bitachon is like a trust fall. And we're going to talk later about bitachon and hishtadlut, but I feel like we have to touch on it as we're starting to talk about Nsyonos. Nsyonos being the suffering, bitachon is the faith and the trust, which we're going to talk about in a second. And hishtadlut is our human effort. So hishtadlut is like, remember, like talked last week about opening windows, right? You hit a brick wall, you open a window. You like create a kli, pottery. I talked about home decorating, right? In our like kind of spiritual sense. So hishtadlut are the things we do so that we can let Hashem do the parts that he did. And the purpose that we're talking about this week is devekus, okay, which is a cleaving. And so I'm laying there in the nursing home and I think I told you, I mean, I couldn't, I was legally blind. I was in an adult diaper. I couldn't walk. I couldn't shower myself. I hadn't eaten. I couldn't eat for 3 years. Like it was like not a high point. And I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain. I'm not sure if I told you guys this story, but I'm laying there and when you live in a nursing home, you see that people will come up to me and they'd be like, "Okay, Gabby, I'm saying goodbye." I'm like, "What do you mean you're saying goodbye? You just like walked up to me." They're like, "No, I'm done." There is absolutely, when you're living among the dying, you see that there actually is a pattern where people can choose when they're just done. And I would see it. They would come up, they'd be like, "Gabby, goodbye." So we'll say goodbye, and then within a day or within a week, they had died. And I had this moment. I was laying there and I was in so much pain. I mean, I was in so much physical pain. Like I can't overstate how much like it was an unimaginable amount of physical, and it went on and on and on and on for like so long, and I was on so much drugs. And I was laying there and I saw this like I felt this reshus, this permission from Hashem that there was a world on the other side, there was no pain, and that I could go there. Like that I had done my bit, like and it was okay. And it was pretty appealing because there was no pain, right? And I was in so much physical pain. Um and like I thought about my kids and it was my youngest was 11 and I couldn't find a way that she would be better if I let go. Like I couldn't find a construct where I could for the older ones. Really, I did. Like I was like, "Oh, my son will be better because then he'll be like," meaning like, but that one and I said, "Not today. Like thank you so much, but not today." And at that moment, I didn't know what Dvekus was Because Dvekas, the Hasidim especially, they have these tishes where they have a meal and dancing and singing. And the idea is to reach a moment of Dvekas, a moment of cleaving, a moment of like attachment to Hashem, to create it. Like the goal of Torah and Kabbalah and Hasidus and all of it is to actually cleave to Hashem, right? To have this like bond. And so I'm laying there and I say, not today. And I'm telling you, at that moment, I felt the Shekhinah come into the room. The Shekhinah is like the female spirit, soft side of Hashem. And I felt a chuppah. I felt a cleaving. I felt an attachment. And then after that moment, I've never felt fully alone. I've always felt like Hashem and I are like doing this thing together. And so this is the goal, because whether it's our children or a spouse or a parent or a best friend, everyone will leave you. I mean, yes, we're alone in this world. Okay, you are. We are. We are here with a particular focus and a particular reason for being here. Now, obviously, we're part of Am Yisrael. Like, we're going to talk about all of those things. But when I was laying there in the hospital bed, and when you're going through your big Nsyonos, and I know you have one on your mind right now, as I'm doing all this talking, the thing, that big rock, that thing that it feels impossible. How could it possibly happen? You're alone through that. Meaning there's not another person. Maybe they'll show up, maybe they won't, right? And we get angry at people when they don't show up. Like as if we deserve, right? This idea that like, well, like you should be here. You should be here, right? What? Why? If I'm going through the journey and the path that is directly customized for me at this moment, because this is what my soul needs most, and I need to not have that person there, then no, they shouldn't be there. Remember, when we get upset with people, they're just players. They're just players in this dress rehearsal that is our individual life. Right? And our individual purpose in going through these challenges is because it's the thing our soul, our neshama needs in order to grow, in order to be the best version of us. Because our neshama has a tikkun. Our neshama has repair that has to happen. Our neshama has a purpose, a unique purpose in this world that you were uniquely qualified to do, that you were created to do, because the world can't exist without you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been born. Right? So therefore, if it's the thing that I need, then let's not be alone. Let's use it to get closer to my creator, who that's all he wanted all along. Because one of our purposes in being created is to grow. Remember, in the Simpson, you have this big empty space. And remember, there were two kinds of perfection with Hashem. There was the perfection before, when he filled everything. And then there was the perfection when he pulled back and made space for us, because he wanted a dwelling place in this world. He wanted to grow to us. And he wanted to create people that were not animals, that had bechira, that had free choice, that could choose between good and evil. And remember, in order to be able to choose between good and evil, the evil has to look at least as appealing as the good, right? Because the evil is truth that's been distorted. And so when we're going through these challenges, it gets really, really easy to get into the distortion of what we think is happening, of what we think should be happening. Right? Of what everyone else's agenda on what's occurring, as opposed to focusing on what do I need to learn? What do I need to get through? Because frankly, my attitude at this point is that if I know that every challenge is happening because it's custom tailored for me because I need to get through it, then yalla, let's get through it, right? Like, why do I want to drag my feet? Right? I'm supposed to not be in that apartment. I'm supposed to go to the next thing. So, like, why would I want to slow that down? How about we just get through it? Right? Because I believe that there's something on the other side because of bitachon. And bitachon is like this trust fall. If you ever did like the camp exercises, everybody comes around you and everybody holds out their hand and you fall backwards, right? And that's what bitachon is. Bitachon is saying, look, I did my bit, and for whatever reason, I am blind and totally dying in a nursing home, or homeless officially in Eretz Yisrael, or like pick any one of your things in between, right? But Bitachon says that everything's happening for the good. Now, here's the difference between everything, oh, everything's happening just as it should, versus everything that's happening for the good. So, what that means is that the thing that's happening that seems terrible is actually a gift. And I know that that's really hard because it's the hardest thing that you could possibly go through. So whatever the thing is in your mind that you're thinking about this whole night, I know it seems impossible because the hardest thing you could possibly get through. But the cancer, all of it was a gift for me. Because I achieved to Vegas, not through any merit of my own, not because I was deserving of it, but because Hashem came to me and I was there and and there was a chuppah, there was a cleaving, right? And so when I'm able to be there, then I don't feel that alone, right? Instead of saying, oh, my children, parents, best friend, whomever should be here, right? And I get caught, like, just stuck in that wheel of like anger and planning and da da da. If I'm able to get off that Ferris wheel completely and say that's not even the track I'm on, right? Like where I'm at is everything that's happening is because for the good. This is all happening to help me get cleave to Hashem, be a better version of myself, and frankly, not have to come back to earth until like the resurrection of the dead and everything is really lovely here, right? Because we do believe in reincarnation, right? We talked about this. We could have up to 7 neshamas in us. So, like, why not just get it right this time, right? If I've messed this up for multiple thousands of years, right? Let's say it's the homeless thing, right? There's something I had to get over, right? And I keep having to come back and go through it. How about I just like Custer's Last Stand or the whatever, right? I just stand on the hill and say, all right, let's do this, right? Because I have to get through it because otherwise it wouldn't be happening. Okay? If I didn't have to get through a bunch of situations that were connected to not being able to walk for 10 years, it wouldn't have happened. Because Bitachon says that everything that's happening is a gift, is exactly as it should be for the good. So Yitzchak teaches us Gavura, right? Yitzchak is laying there on the altar ready to get like burned alive or hacked or right? And he's fine. He's so fine that we don't have to even learn how he is. The whole Torah is focused on Avram and Sarah and how they're not fine, right? Why is it not focused on Yitzchak? Because he was good with Hashem. He had discipline. He had restraint. He was receiving. And so when we look at the Akedah and think about Gevurah, from the viewpoint of Yitzchak, we understand that there can be an enormous amount of love in holding back. That sometimes the greatest thing, sometimes, yes, love is the potential, right? Like chesed is like the first few dates, right? You're like out there and you're so great and it's so great and you're like doing right. You love everybody and you're doing your thing. And then Kavor is like, 10 years in, the baby's crying, the bills haven't been paid, the home isn't so clean, there's, like, all of the right? And you stay, not begrudgingly, you stay because you know you're home, right? And because it's okay, because you know where you're meant to be. And when we're going through these big challenges, these big struggles, when we're able to understand that we're exactly where we're meant to be at this moment and that it's good. Because Nsyonos, right? It's the hardest thing for me to get through, but it's the thing I have to get through. The thing I have to get through for my tikkun, for my tshuva, for my correction, my personal correction, or my healing of the world, or my healing of my own soul. For all of those things. But I have everything I need to get through it. And that's the thing. As it's starting, right? Like I'm packing up my stuff, not knowing where I'm going. But I know absolutely that I have everything I need to get through this. What did I have? I had friends who had room, who said, come, stay with us. I had like everything that I needed to get through, I had. And so the thing that you're going through, the thing you've been thinking about the whole night that seems impossible for your soul to get through, you already have everything you need to get through it. And so when we look at the Sefirot, and remember, if it's like our own, like Myers-Briggs astrology, your temperament, let's look at how to be godlike in the middle of the challenges with what do I already have? Okay? Because the thing that you're going through, the hardest thing for you, right, is not my thing. And I couldn't get through what you're getting through because it was custom tailored for you. And you couldn't get through what I'm getting through because I've been given everything I need to get through it. So when we look at like purpose and mission, right? And the whole reason we're doing this of like, why am I here? Ask yourself when you're looking at these Nsyonos, when you're looking at these challenges, these unbearable boulders, if you know that you already have everything you need to get through it, what is it? What are the things that are your strengths, are your beauty, that makes you uniquely qualified to successfully navigate this particularly seemingly impossible hurdle? Because Yitzchak was laying on the altar 3 days. I mean, the altar I can almost like deal with, right? Like, okay, in a moment he had like this divine devekis and he felt so close to Hashem, he's fine. But what about the 3 days? They're walking from like Hebron to Jerusalem, 3 days with the donkeys and the wood and the like, how was he okay for the whole 3 days? Because he already had everything he needed, right? And so when we look at the Sefirot, it tells us also where we naturally have some strengths, right? And so if your tendency is naturally to be expansive and giving, how can that help you with the challenge that you're going through that's custom made because it's custom tailored for you to fill your purpose? Now, remember when we talk about purpose, we're talking about 3 levels, right? We're talking about everybody human, then we're talking about as your community, as a Jew, and then your individual. And we're still way up here on everybody human, which means that everybody's going through challenges and suffering that is the hardest thing they can get through, that they've already been given everything they need to get through. Everybody's going through that, which can help sometimes when somebody's really rude and cuts you off and is horrible in line, right? When we consider that what they're going through is the hardest thing they can possibly get through, right? And we're all kind of like bumper cars, right? We're all like in that thing with our own car, and we just gotta just like boom, 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 right? And we forget that like we're all doing that, right? We're all doing that. We're all like literally trying the best we can in the hardest possible things that we need to get through. And so, how do I show up at the best version of myself in the middle? I remember I talked about the fact that like non-Jews look for inspiration after, right? Like non-Jews may find me very inspirational 10 years after I can walk again and I can, right? But Jews find joy in the middle of it, in the middle of it. So why am I telling you about my housing situation? Because I'm in the middle of it. Because I don't have a happy ending story for you. And I'm telling you that I'm so joyful today and you see it, right? Because this is our superpower. This is how we can dance in the middle of horrible pain. This is how we find a way forward as a nation, is by pulling on the fact that we're able to find and harness joy in the middle of the pain, in the middle of the darkness, in the middle of the anguish, in the middle of the impossible. How? Because bitachon says that everything that's happening is absolutely for the good. And so my neshama, even if I can't always feel it, when I'm able to see that, like, this is exactly where Hashem wants me and this is so good for me, then I'm able to have joy in the middle, in the middle. And when I'm struggling, the question is, what do I have within me already? If Hashem has already given me everything I need to survive a particular challenge, right? Because it's the hardest thing, but because it's the thing that I have to go through. And Hashem has already given me experiences, resources, chizuk and strength to get through this unique set of challenges. Then when we talk about finding our purpose and our mission, if you look at it like the challenge is like the end of the book that tells you why it's happening, right? Like, meaning if you start there and you say, okay, this challenge, I don't have a home. You know, before I came to Israel, my Rev was like, oh, you can't be homeless in your homeland. Like, that's so nice. Only kind of bad, right? Like, how do we define home? Like, as in like a place where, you can like, so, but in the middle of it, I already know that it's going to be good. I already know that it's exactly what's meant to happen. So how do I find remember we find what we focus on? Remember I talked to you and I said, look, you go out in the world and you're looking for like dirty, angry people. Like somebody will cut you off. Somebody will like throw litter on the ground. Some kid will be like rude and not follow the rules. Like if you're looking for that, 100% of the time you'll find it. And then I said, but if you're looking, you go out and you walk the key car, the center, right? You look at these beautiful Israeli people and these beautiful children, and how about the fathers? The Israeli fathers, like pushing all the time with the backpacks and the bikes, right? When you're looking for that, when you're looking for joy, when you're looking for love, when you're looking for achdut, for unity of Am Yisrael, 100% of the time you're going to find it. We find what we focus on. So how do I focus on what are the unique capabilities that Hashem has given me to get through this challenge? Because if I focus there, instead of what I don't deserve or what should have, could have been happening, when I change all the language to the challenge and say it's not suffering, it's a matana, it's a gift, when I change to that, then I already know I have everything I need. So then I can focus on how to harness that. And I can focus on how to grow it, right? So, for example, in the housing thing, I've never shared other than when I was married or with kids, other than with a spouse or children. I've actually never had a roommate. In college, I got my own studio apartment. It was just me and the cockroaches, and they were, only nighttime roommates. Like, I mean, I just didn't do it. Like, I have not lived side by side with people. In fact, like, I've just always been like, look, I'm so happy. I know it sounds weird because 'cause I'm, like, pretty outgoing when I'm out of the right? But I really, really, like, cherish my quiet time alone. I mean, I'll spend a Shabbos, like, home alone with a good book and, like, very, very happy. Um, and so now I'm living with, like, I'm gonna be living with somebody else, maybe for a day, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, I don't know. But I've been given everything I need in order to get through this well, and yet it's a challenge that I need. So what do I naturally have, and what do I need to develop, right? Because if there's a remember, one side is naturally we're naturally good at, another side is tougher. We have an expansiveness in everything, we have a constriction in everything. We have right, there's this constant so as I'm going through, what do I have that's natural that can help me? And what are the things that I need to work on? So what's natural for me is is that now, I don't know if this was always natural, but now I really do have like a huge level of like everything that's happening is exactly as it should be. I'm able to bring this like positivity and joyfulness to my host. We're doing the cooking, right? We cook so we're gonna be cooking at her apartment by her choice. She said, "Come cook." We cook for the miuim, the full Shabbats, and now we're gonna be bringing that bracha to her. So how can I like help harness that? How can I make that like a great match? Because it's something that I'm good at and it's easy for me. Right? It's easy for me to do the cooking. It's easy for me to open up the house. It's easy for me to like bring it like I enjoy it. But what do I need to work on? I need to work on this concept of shared space. Not something I have a lot of successful experience at, and I kind of feel it right now in my stomach as I'm mentioning it, right? Like, and not only shared space, but I'm a guest. It's not my space, right? Which for me is always like a hard, like I'm super happy to like welcome people in, right? But there's like a dynamic, right? Again, like, oh, well, you owe them. Like there's this whole like I know one of my kids, so she goes out for Shabbosim and stuff like that. She loves it, but she's like, sometimes I just can't do it because I still want to be a guest. I don't want to have to be like extra polite, extra and so so how can I work on that? But then there's a third level, which is that if I'm going through the thing that I have to go through in order for me to grow, and the other person is going through the thing they have to go through. And remember, why are we created? To grow. And what did I say when we talk about relationships? And I say the rest of the world, right, is like, oh, is he good for me? Is it good for me? Is this like a good is he like nice to me? Right. And that's not the question we ask at all as Jews. We to be godlike, we say, am I making space so that person can grow? Am I making space so that person can grow? Well, now I have that on a whole, that becomes like pretty specific, right? I'm going into somebody else's space through her own generosity, through her own graciousness. She's giving up her space. Now, when I'm entering into her space, am I continuing to leave space for her to grow and for me to grow? While I'm walking into somebody else's home, am I creating an environment that's conducive 24/7 when I'm like somebody who's like really, let me just pull up the covers on a late night with a book? Am I doing that balance? Well, that's something I can really pay attention to, right? Because I know that one of the reasons I was put here on this earth, just like you, was to grow. right? And I know that to be godlike, just like you, I need to make space. And in this case, in order to be godlike, just like Yitzchak God, right? Which is that he just let it be, right? He just let everybody, so his dad had to like almost kill him and they had to like walk for 3 days, right? Imagine he constricted to make room for everybody to just do their bit, right? And so now that's actually what I need to do. That's where I'm at. And that's why I'm sharing this with you because I can share with you what the skills I did 10 years ago and I will do it continually. But to be authentic with each other, to have real honest growth together, it's finding joy from the middle of it, right? It's saying, yeah, it's a little up in the air. Like people are like, where are you living? I'm like, is that a trick question? What do you mean by that? Right? So in the middle, when I start focusing on, okay, this is the hardest thing for me, right? Because this is actually my biggest fear because it's happened before. Right? I was homeless with 4 kids under the age of 9, living out of a van, and it was not fun. It was not fun, and, like, when we have these things happen, like, sometimes you could be like, "Oh, I already got through that." Right? I got through it, so I have what it takes to get through it. Or you could be like, "I got through that thing, and it was awful, and it was painful, and I didn't like it at all." Right? Like, I don't wanna have another surgery. I've had over 50. And just because I've had over 50 surgeries doesn't mean that I'm gonna tell you it's fine, right? They're not fun. So, but what do I have to learn? Nothing happens by accident. Nothing happens by accident. Because we are exactly where we are supposed to be at this moment. So if you imagine harnessing what Yitzchak is laying there when he's walking the 3 days, and he knows that this does not seem like it ends well, right? Like that he did not want to be a human sacrifice after Hashem had supposedly banned human sacrifice. But why do we not hear his story? Because he was walking with Hashem. Because he had Dveikus. Because he had a cleaving to Hashem. Because when he was walking for the 3 days, he had absolute trust that everything that was happening was for the good. Now, obviously, we can't be nearly as perfect as our patriarchs and matriarchs. And I want to give you this interesting idea of time, and we're going to wrap up here because I always try to end on time, which is that we are at this moment in time another day farther away from Matan Torah. So at the time of Torah, Matan Torah is Sinai, we're at the base, and we actually feel, see, breathe in the holiness that is Hashem. Us, not an emissary, not Moshe. The reason Moshe ended up with the tablets and the up and down is because after the first 3 commandments, we were so overwhelmed with the feeling of that much spiritual that we died 3 times. Hashem comes down and gives us the first commandment, and we're like, whoa. And we like revive. And it comes down and gives us the second, and we're like, we can't take it because there's so much spiritual energy. Comes down the 3rd time, and we're like, Moshe, can you take this for us? Right? And so then Moshe goes up and gets the rest of spiritual energy. The point being that at that moment, we were at the holiest, most perfect view of Am Yisrael. So every day we're a little less holy because we're farther away from that. But every day we're a day closer to the coming of Mashiach. Every day we are a day closer to a final redemption where we all become the best versions of ourselves for all time. And so if you think about that with everything, yes, it's not as good as it used to be. It's harder. It's whatever. We're older. We have more pain. We're like, more things are happening because we are a day farther away from our young, vibrant selves, right? That were born and played in the whatever. But we're a day closer to the ultimate of being the best versions of ourselves we can be. And so remember, you find what you focus on. So this week, go out, and as you're looking at these challenges, and I know they're big, I'm not making light of them. They're the hardest thing that you could possibly get through. But they're the thing you need to get through because Hashem loves you. And Hashem loves you so much that he already gave you everything you need to successfully navigate it. Good week. And we ended on time. Okay, everybody from Substack, thank you so much. Bye.